Number 1. Unexpected. It is important to note that this story took place in 2016, and many of you will probably realize why when I get to the end of it. The high school in our area was outside of the small country town close by, so most people got there by bus. However, there were a few of us who lived out of town and were close enough that we could walk. I was one of these people. I was 16 and a junior in high school when this happened. It was in the fall as well, probably sometime in October. I lived in the opposite direction from the town. I could walk down the main road until I got to the road my house was on, then turn there and walk along the road until I got home. However, I didn't intend to do this because the walk was longer. Instead, I would cross the main road, walk through a field, and then walk through a forest to get to the road my house was on. This was a diagonal shortcut to that road and would save me a lot of walking. There were normally a few other kids who lived in the area that I did, who walked through that field and forest too. They were guys that I grew up knowing and still know today. But on this day, all 3 of them were not walking with me. They were all on the football team and had a practice, so I was walking all by myself. I didn't mind walking by myself, but I did mind the fact that it was raining lightly outside. I didn't mind getting wet, but I did hate walking through mud. I didn't have a choice though, since my parents worked in the afternoon and evening and were unable to come and pick me up. But since it was raining lightly, I thought I could get home quickly enough before it got really bad and soggy outside. As soon as I crossed the road, I noticed something moving up ahead of me in the forest. It was too far away to see who or what it was, but I didn't really care. It was likely someone who was involved in the maintenance of the area. Honestly, I didn't put any thought into who it was, or who it might be, at that point in the afternoon. It began raining harder the closer I got to the forest. Also, the rain was really cold, and it felt sharp as it was hitting me. It got a bit better when I eventually got to the edge of the forest. It was a pretty thick forest, and although most of the leaves had fallen from the trees already, it was still thick enough to stop some of the rain from pouring down on me. Honestly though, I was so wet already that it didn't matter how much wetter I was gonna get. As I was walking through the forest, it had gotten pretty dark due to the cloud coverage. Even through the noise of the rain, I began hearing some other noises around me. It kept catching my attention, and I would look around, expecting to see a deer or something out there. But I never was able to connect anything with the noises in the beginning. But I was beginning to feel a little scared as I made my way through the forest. About halfway through, I heard a snapping sound, and when I looked over in the direction of the sound, I know I saw a shadow run behind a tree. There was someone out there, and I remembered seeing the figure from earlier. Immediately, I thought about clowns. I had been following the horror news, if that is what we can call it, and this was in the middle of the clown phenomena back in 2016. So I thought that one of the guys from school was probably trying to take part in that too. It was known that a few of us walked this way after school, so it had to be someone from school trying to scare me, and I thought that was pretty lame to be honest. Although it was raining pretty hard by that point, and much of the rain was getting through the branches of the trees, I wanted to confront whoever it was. I was already soaked too, so it didn't really matter if I got any wetter. I began walking over to the tree that I had seen the figure hide behind. I was really interested to see what silly clown disguise the person had on. However, when I got over to the tree, there wasn't a clown standing behind it. There wasn't anyone standing behind it. But there was something there that freaked me out. I'm not going to go into detail about this because it would really upset some people, but there was a slaughtered animal laying on the ground behind the tree. It was so upsetting that all I could do was stand there and look at it. I don't know what made me turn around. I might have heard something, or maybe I just felt someone looking at me, but I did turn around, and I saw the figure standing off beside another tree. He was not dressed as a clown, though. He was a kid I knew from school, though, and he had blood on him, which I assume came from the animal. "Hey, come here," he called out to me. "You want to see something scary?" No, I didn't. I told him I had to get home and began walking. After a few steps I turned around, half expecting him to be following me home, but he didn't. He just stood there for a while. I kept checking over my shoulder, and eventually, one time when I turned to look, he was no longer there. When I got home, I told my parents about it. They didn't seem to care, though. They didn't think it was worth calling the school about. I saw killing animals as psychopathic, but they simply didn't see it that way. I told a few friends about what had happened, and they told me it was no surprise. The kid was whacked, and had some really weird stuff in the past. Most of us felt he would be in jail by the time he was 18. It's probably not a surprise that this actually happened. Number 2. Hunting. I am aging myself, but this happened many decades ago. This was back in the days when I was young enough to still go hunting. Although my favorite kind of hunting was coon hunting, that's not what I was up to this weekend. However, I was going to stay out in the woods overnight for one night. The weather was fine, but it was pretty cold out. I didn't have much luck finding anything the first night out. I always used to think that the animals were aware of their hunting season when it came around, and that they would all try to hide once it did. I didn't bring a tent with me when I did overnight hunting. In my younger years, I was quite the outdoorsman, and didn't mind sleeping on the ground, using my backpack for a pillow. I did bring a light blanket with me, because even when it was really warm, I cannot fall asleep without having something covering me. However, this night was going to be pretty cold, but I had done this over and over again, and would be able to sleep fine. I woke up in the middle of the night, and wasn't sure why at first. I was normally a pretty sound sleeper, who would only wake up during the night if I had to go to the bathroom. This wasn't the case this time. Something else had woken me up. I looked around, trying to see if anything was different from when I went to sleep, but it was really, really dark. I had chosen to go hunting on a night where the moon was nothing but a tiny crescent in the sky, so I didn't have the benefit of much light. Then I heard something. It was the sound of someone stepping on something. It could have been an animal or a person, I had no way of knowing, but either way, I had to be as alert as possible. I stood up as quietly as I could, still trying to listen to anything that might be out there. For a few moments there was still nothing. This made me nervous, though. If I had heard an animal out there, it was less likely for an animal to stop moving around than it would have been for a person. Being that I was a bit of a country guy myself, I knew there were people even more rural than me out there, and they really hated it when people encroached on their area. I didn't call out in case it was a person. I just stood there for what seemed like a long time, listening for anything further. Finally, I heard something that sounded like a person moving very quickly through the leaf-covered ground. I knew the way most animals sounded, so I knew for a fact this was not an animal. There was someone else out there with me. I reached to the side of the area that I was sleeping. There was a tree right there. I had leaned my rifle up against it. I was reaching for the rifle, but still looking in the different direction into the forest. But when I expected to close my hand on the gun, I ended up grabbing nothing. I turned and looked at the tree. Although, like I mentioned, it was very dark outside, I could clearly see that my rifle was not leaning on the tree. I looked on the ground in case the wind had blown it over, but it wasn't on the ground either. Frantically, I searched the area for the rifle, but couldn't find it anywhere. The only explanation, and the immediate one that I thought of, was that whoever I had heard had taken my rifle. That was pretty scary, but also really angered me, so I let my anger take over, and I ran over in the direction that I had heard the noises come from. My rifle was very important to me, and I was determined to get it back. I kept hearing the noises of someone moving through the woods, and I kept following them. I continued to do this until the point that I heard a gunshot ahead of me. I stopped and just stood, looking in the direction that I had heard the shot from. It was very, very close to me. Suddenly, someone ahead of me stepped out from behind a tree. I couldn't see him very clearly, but I could tell that he was holding my rifle. He also had it pointed at me. He then lowered it down, and I was about to rush him before I watched him take something out with his other hand. I could easily tell that it was a really huge knife, so I immediately stopped. We stood there for a little while, simply looking at each other. I knew I couldn't say anything or make a move because he had both the rifle and a knife. I just waited to see what he would do. Finally, after a long period of time, he finally did something. "Quit following me, or I will shoot your kneecaps off and gut you with the knife." He then quickly began running off into the forest. I stood there for a while, not sure what I could do. I finally decided that I could do nothing. I had absolutely no way to defend myself from him. I had to give up. I also wasn't going to spend the rest of the night out there. I was a bit scared. I had been hunting a lot in my life, and that was the first time such a thing had ever happened. I didn't feel safe, and there was no chance I would be able to get back to sleep. I eventually got a new rifle, but I also began hunting in a different area. Number 3. Visitor. A storm had been brewing for quite a bit of time. We lived in the hills, and were able to see a large expanse of the sky, so we saw the storm clouds as they were just appearing over the horizon, and watched them as they were approaching. The clouds were very dark green and black, and it looked like it was going to be a really nasty storm. The thunder and lightning began long before the clouds even stretched across the entire sky. I always loved storms, so I was out on the porch and watching as the clouds crawled closer and closer to us. Even from a distance, the thunder was really loud, and I could tell that it was going to be one hell of a storm when it arrived. The wind picked up too. Nowadays I know this happens when the pressure in the area falls, but at the time I just liked it. I would estimate it was 20 miles per hour winds, with gusts up to 60. Several times when the wind hit me, I felt that it was going to knock me and my porch chair over. We didn't have a lot for entertainment because we didn't have a television at the time, so watching the storms was always a highlight for me. It got so dark when the clouds overtook the sky, and I stayed out on the porch for as long as I could before the rain began falling. It was falling so hard, too, that had I not gotten up and retreated into the house, I would have been soaked and wet within seconds. At the time, my mom, my sister, and I were the only ones who lived in the house. I was in my teens and my sister was 10. They were both the opposite of me and scared of storms, so it didn't help at all when the electricity eventually went out on us. Fortunately, we had a wood-burning stove that we could use to cook on as well. We always kept wood in the house too, so it was dry and we started up a fire. It was cool enough that it was nice to also have the stove to keep us warm. This was one of those really fierce storms too, that went on for a very long time. When the sun went down, it was still raging on outside. It didn't seem like it was going to let up anytime soon, and we likely wouldn't get electricity back anytime sooner. Being as far out in the hills as we were fortunate to have electricity at all, but when it went out, it would often be a long time before it came back on again. I'm not sure how late at night it was, but eventually we were all surprised by a very loud knocking on the door. We didn't answer it right away, mostly because we were startled. So after a few moments, there was more knocking. My mom went and answered the door. I had no idea who it could have been. We did have plenty of family in the area, but it didn't make much sense that they would come knocking on our door during a bad storm. Eventually, my mom let someone in the house. I don't have a great memory of what the guy looked like, but he was probably in his late 20s or early 30s. The way he was dressed, we assumed that he had been out hunting and was caught in the storm. He didn't have a gun on him, though. I immediately didn't like this guy. Something about him was off, and he was really creepy. If I had answered the door, I wouldn't have let him in. But my mom has a soft spot, and trusts other people a lot more than she should have. My mom got the guy a towel and then a blanket, and she put the kettle on the oven to make tea. We didn't drink coffee back then, so it was the only hot drink available. My sister and I were sitting on the couch, and the guy was sitting in a chair that was close to the wood-burning stove. He was just sitting there, looking at my sister and I in the chair. My sister felt even more scared of him than I did, because I could tell when she was fidgeting on the other side of the couch. The guy didn't really talk very much. He would mostly answer questions with a nod or such, rather than saying anything, but there was a lot of awkward silence in the room, which was only broken by my family. It, in fact, got so uncomfortable that I got up and went to my room, telling my mom I had to do a double check on a homework assignment. I really had another reason for going in there, and it was one that proved to be correct. Coming out of my room, I noticed that the guy had taken a pocket knife out of his pocket. He was finally talking, but using his hands a lot when he was talking. He was waving the open knife all around, and I could tell that it was scaring my mom and sister. My mom asked him to put it away, and she asked really politely. He simply ignored her and kept doing what he was doing. "We brought you in, out of the cold rain," I told him. I walked into the room with my hands behind my back. "You need to put the knife away." Looking at me, the guy got up, and he took a few steps toward me. I was holding my gun behind my back and brought it out for him to see. My grandpa had given me the gun on my 13th birthday, but hadn't told my mom about it. He told me I needed it to protect my family since we didn't have a dad in the house. The guy stopped in his tracks. He closed up the knife and put it away. He then tried apologizing, although it sounded like he didn't mean it. "You need to leave," I told him. He smiled and said, "You are not going to shoot me, boy." I pulled the trigger, giving him a warning shot. I wouldn't be surprised if he had shit his pants right then. The look on his face suggested that he did. He immediately took off out the door and out into the rain. My mom ran to the door and locked it with the doorknob lock and a chain lock. She continued to look out the window to make sure that he had left. She was a little mad at me for having the gun without her knowing about it, but other than that she was happy that I was able to tell the guy was trouble. We don't know what he wanted because I didn't give him a chance to let us know. We were just happy that he was gone. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. First I want to thank all my paid Patreon subscribers, starting with my 2 VIPs, Chiamerah Cat and Pixie Hopper 8. I also want to thank Heidi H, Chronic J, Stinky News, EricaOdd, Tracy Sellars, Kelli Clark, and Broken Angel. Now I've been trying this thing where I'm getting on a better schedule, and I think I've been feeling a lot healthier than I felt the past few years, so hopefully I'll be able to do that. But my birthday is coming up on Friday. Although I want to start doing videos on Fridays too, I will probably try to do one on Saturday because being that it's my birthday, I'm just going to try to take it easy. But we'll try to get a video up on Saturday if I can do that. In the future though, I'll probably only do live streams on Saturday because I really would like to do those again. In the meantime, if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the subscribe button and the bell if you want to be notified of new videos. Leave me a comment, which I'll do my best to get back to, and share the video with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you want narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it to the address included in the description. Now, I'd like to mention all my free Patreon members: Anthony Bowers, Remi, Venikins, Rose Metro, Woofer McWooferson, Cindy Cleveland, Vanapira Rayne, William H., Alien Unicorn 13, Kathryn Lynch, The Bama Guy 334, Michael Vasquez, Bonnie Lynn, Collet Bond, Krista Pike, Prince UVA, HF Creations, Bonnie Gibbs, Linda Moore, DJ Lira, Evil Black Cat, Lori Hicks, Lisa Herman, Krystal Robin, Hillbilly 13, RhettSchall, John Tull, Baby and Baby, Sherry Hubbard, and Vina Waldren. But as always, most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.